So today on the podcast, we have Tom Halpin. Tom Halpin is an Irish Jiu-Jitsu fighter, and he is going to be on Polaris coming up soon, and we're going to talk to him. I don't want to get... I'm looking at the board. We have all this cool stuff. He's got a lot of cool titles to his name, and he's accomplished a lot of cool stuff, and I don't want to talk about it because then it would kind of take away from the fun of discovering maybe who he is. If you don't know who he is, you're going to discover who he is on the podcast. But super nice guy. I had a fun time talking with him, and so we'll get into the podcast. As always, guys, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. I'm putting in my narrator voice so that some of you guys are probably fast forwarding right now, but you could be listening to this. You could be listening to me right now. Anyway, if you want to support the podcast, you can go check out Charlotte's Web. It's funny. The other day I got one of the students actually sent me a message. He got some of the gummies. Another one got some of the gummies, the sleep gummies, and liked them. Because again, they have both the CBD, which is awesome, and it's also got some melatonin in it, which has some good benefits. And I have another guy. I gave him a tincture to try, and he's enjoying it. He said he feels like he's getting something from it, so he's gonna go on for a while, then he's gonna get off of it. Which is something I think it's always kind of interesting, kind of just get contrast. Yeah. Try it for a little bit, see what it's like, and then come off of it, and then see how you feel. It's almost like Joe, my business partner. Joe recently had a weightlifting competition, and he had to make sure he was on weight, and so he basically ate super, super clean for like 2 weeks. Gets done. And then he just eats like he like breaks a bunch of records, and I think he holds like 10 state records or something. He's fourth. He's fourth in the nation at his his age division, and so he was like, I'm gonna eat. I'm gonna go hog wild on some food. Well, he comes in on the Monday and he's like, dude, my joints ache. I feel terrible, and he's back on the clean eat wagon because you have contrast. And I did the same thing, back in the day where I got on it. I felt a lot of benefits, for me personally, a number of different ones. Everything from, again, just overall sense of well-being was more there. The aches and pains, inflammation seemed to be less in my body, and a number of different things. And then I got off of it. I was like, well, let me see if this thing actually has something. And I definitely noticed that there is definitely a difference. And so, again, if you want to check it out, go to charlottesweb.com, use a promo code Jiu-Jitsu, and I encourage you to try it. If you want to, if you've been kind of curious about it, try it out, see what you think. And if you like it, then good. Just keep on going and make it a part of your regular supplementation. But if you don't notice that there's a difference between, when you're on and off, well then, maybe your body just doesn't respond to it the same way. But I would definitely give it a try to see, because I know I put it off for a long time. I was like, this sounds like snake oil. Tried it. I was like, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Yeah. And it's good quality stuff for sure, which helps. And one thing we're going to do with Patreon for next month, November. So whoever is subscribed in November, we're going to do a drawing, and somebody will get a free bottle.
Oh, cool!
If you're in the States and allowed to get it, we'll send you a free bottle of some CBD. So
yeah, and guys, with the Patreon, what we're also doing, we're doing something kind of new. So along with the content that we have in the back end, which we have every podcast extras. Basically, in a conversation about something with that guest. We have one with every single podcast. There's extra podcasts that have never been released, an extra conversation with Eugene and I where we talk about God knows what. So some of this stuff can be really good. Some of this stuff can be kind of out there. There's also things like warm-up videos, and there's some rolling videos. There's a seminar that I did. There's a bunch of extra content in there. You can get that. And then we have a new option there as well where on Sundays, usually around 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, and then we also alternate it sometimes to do one at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. We do a meetup where I jump on Zoom and I talk with all my Jiu-Jitsu Vault members, and that's it's on my back end of my website, and I chat with them about whatever. I'll usually sort of do a talk about something, then afterwards there's a little bit of Q&A, and it's a way for people to talk with me directly. And so if that's something you're interested in, if you would like to actually talk with me directly, there is an option for the Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, there's an option to both get all that content that I just talked about, but you can also opt in to join us in those bi-weekly meetups. Sometimes I do them weekly, but I definitely do them bi-weekly, and you can join us for one of those. And then the last thing, guys, is Epic Roll. I don't know, because we film these things in advance. I don't know when this is going to drop, but at the time of filming this, we did our podcast last week with Matt. Matt is the owner of Epic Roll, and a super cool dude. Got a chance to roll with him, and getting to meet him and roll with him. There's something. He's a legit brown belt. He's tough, and there's something about that where I roll with people, and I instantly like you more because you're legit. Yeah. I remember I remember like rolling with people a couple times where when I first started to kind of get some, like people started to know who I was, I would go to others' gyms. And when I would roll with them, they would get up and they'd be like, oh man, you're actually legit.
Yeah.
Like you're real. You're not like a faker. And there's something about that because we live in a world full of like, fake influencing BS where people are driving their rented Lambos and stuff like that, where you just don't even know it's real. So when you roll with someone, like rolling is real. Like there's no way to fake that. And so I was rolling with Matt, and we had some great rolls. And so again, that instantly made me like him more. But great dude. Again, I really like his product lines. I like his stuff, and he's actually going to be making some stuff for us coming up soon. More on that later. But if you want to check out his stuff, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. Use a promo code Jiu-Jitsu, and again, check out. He's got a variety of T-shirts, rash guards, gis. I mean, the whole thing. He's got everything. Everything is super comfy. I think it's well designed. I really like the slightly either minimalist or well crafted design of it. Sometimes it's like I'll see people make jiu-jitsu clothing and it's either junky. It doesn't look very creative. Yeah. Or it's very over the top and it's just too much. Like I can wear his stuff out when I'm just out and around, and I like that. I like to be able to wear jiu-jitsu clothing or wear kind of a lifestyle clothing where I can just go out and do it wherever I want to. I don't have to. It doesn't like I can. It's one of those things where I don't just have to, or I cannot just only wear this. That doesn't make any sense. But basically, wear this only at like a jiu-jitsu competition. Yeah, I can wear this wherever, and it's not going to be out of place. And so I like his stuff. Check it out. And yeah, guys. With that said, let's jump into the podcast and talk to Tom.
Yeah, so one thing that was interesting, I had told you I hadn't really known a lot about you, and I was looking some background on yourself, and you're a black belt under Cyborg in Miami, right? Yeah.
Pretty random.
Yes, it is random.
The Irish guy that's got a black belt from a guy in Miami.
Yeah. Like there's pretty decent dudes in Ireland, England, all that stuff, probably closer to where you're at. How did that kind of come about? Can you kind of give us a little information on how you met Cyborg and what drew you to that Miami?
It's kind of a lot of the same as a lot of strange things that happens. It's a lot of different coincidences happening together. So when I started off training, I trained at there was one gym in the town that I lived in. I'm from a small city called Limerick in Ireland. There's about 100,000 people. And there was one club, and I used to train there. And I didn't roll with a black belt until I was maybe a blue belt, purple belt even. No, I was a blue belt. And after my first year in college, I'd been training about maybe a year and a half at this stage. I was like an okay blue belt, and I really wanted to travel. I remember that Connection Rio thing. I don't know if you remember that. Was kind of popular at the time, but Brazil was a bit daunting because I could speak fuck all Portuguese, and I was 19, but I looked about 12. I was like 60 kilos, and one of my friends was a purple belt under Cyborg. He had his own gym in another small city in Ireland. He just met Cyborg at a seminar, and Cyborg just said, I opened a gym in Miami. Anyone can come if they want, that kind of thing. And then the Irish guy obviously just shows up at your door because he's like, oh, well, you said anyone can come. So he was a purple belt under Cyborg, and he told me to, don't mind Brazil, go over to Miami and I'll kind of help you get to know everyone and stuff. And then I went over to Miami. First time I was 19, I kind of saved up all year. Used to get maybe $1,500 off the government to as a grant to go to college. So I just spent no money all year, saved what I could, worked with my dad a little bit, and then went to Miami for a few months, and just loved it. It was kind of the first time that jiu-jitsu seemed professional to me. Before it was just like a fun thing that I used to do, and I thought I was the best person in the world when I was a blue belt, and then I kind of went to Miami and realized this is there's a lot more to this game than I thought.
Yeah, what did you like about it? You said it seemed professional. What was the big difference when you went down to Miami to train with Cyborg and all those people down there?
The biggest thing I liked was that there was just no bullshit. It was just training. And if you're a good training partner, if you're good on the mats, if you're open to learn, everyone will help you. You'll get good. And I made a ton of friends and gained 5 kilos because I was just eating and sleeping and doing nothing else. And it was just a great time. And I just realized that jiu-jitsu is what I want to do for my life. I kind of got a taste of the jiu-jitsu lifestyle, as they say. Yeah. And it was class. Really liked it.
Yeah. Now, how did you like with Cyborg again? So now you're under him, and so how
Yeah.
did that kind of come about? Because obviously, go down there, you're training a little bit. At what point do you kind of say
Mhm.
like, this is the dude that I want to be under? This is the guy that I
Mhm.
want to receive my black belt and represent, and all that kind of stuff. How did that come
Yeah.
about?
So when I went back home, then I just trained away for the year again at the small club that I was training at. There was a black belt coach there. He had maybe just got his black belt, but he helped me a lot actually when we were young, like when I was young, and gave me a spare key to the gym so I could go and drill with people in off hours, because he was only there maybe 3 days a week, with he had a family, full-time job, different things. And then every summer for the next few years, I would go to Miami for 3 months. And as well as that, the main coach person that I had besides that other guy was my friend who introduced me to Cyborg. So then maybe the fourth or fifth time I was there in Miami, Cyborg was saying, "Oh, both of you guys are going to get your brown belts." And I was like, "Oh shit!" So I just said it to my coach back home, and he was like, "Yeah, go for it." Like, because I'd been there a lot, and that was kind of that was kind of the direction I was going. I thought at one stage I was just going to move to Miami, you know. So then got the brown belt from Cyborg, started competing a bit more, started winning some things, and then a couple of years later got the black belt off him as well. So that was cool. Cool. It's nice to be part of a big team as well, you know.
Tell me, like, what about Cyborg, like, drew you into him? Like, what attracted you to his style of training and kind of his knowledge base? He's still a guy, he's getting a little older now, but he's still, very competitive, and
Yeah.
ADCC and a lot of these big competitions. What about him and his work ethic, like, really drew you in?
I think it was, as I was saying earlier, the kind of no bullshit vibe that was in the gym, and people would visit from a lot of other gyms. There was a lot of kind of leaders there. But I think the thing that Cyborg's best at is he just keeps no drama in the training room, as you would say. So like for a lot of other gyms, there's a couple of big students, and it's hard for other people to get big as well. And just people are leaving and people are arguing, and there's a lot of drama. But in his gym, like he's in charge, but no one's getting bossed around or anything, and everyone loves training there. And I just love the training, and it was just insane to me before. Like I thought a black belt was absolute magic when I was first started jiu-jitsu. I thought I would never be a blue belt ever. Do you know? And when I went over there and I'm training with like I could tell you any names that they're all just world champions, whatever. And it was just like, it was cool to look at jiu-jitsu from that way. And as well, I noticed that none of them they weren't anything special. They just loved jiu-jitsu and kept training. So I was like, fuck, I'll do the same and I'll see where I get.
Yeah, it has a way of rubbing off when you're around those kind of people.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, I know that the first time I ever like trained with what I would consider like some real good dudes, I was a brown belt, and at a coach of mine that was a friend of mine that was producing some guys that were winning pans and stuff down in Tennessee at the time. And I remember I went and trained with those guys, and I was a brown belt. And I remember like leaving. I trained with them for a week, and I was like, man, I want to I got to like step my game up, because then I would leave and I would come back. Did you feel like when you my whole thing was when I left, I was like, I've got to like take that same mentality that they had down there and bring it back to my gym. When you're training in Miami, when you come back to Ireland, are you like, okay, I've got to bring that same sort of attitude of training that's present in that gym? Did you try to bring that back to your gym in Ireland?
That's exactly what it was. And then I kind of became a bit of a leader at home. I was like the main competitor, and people trusted me because I was always traveling to not just Miami, but other different gyms any chance I got, and kind of learning and bringing back the different ideas. But as well, like I only did 2 years in university, but I was studying sports and exercise science. So I kind of had some different ideas for that. And I was always learning how to train and how not to train. And actually some of the things even in Miami I was seeing they were doing, I was like, maybe they could be doing it better. I wasn't just thinking that they were the best thing in the world. I was like analyzing. So I think the people at home then, since I'm a blue belt, I've been teaching a lot of classes, and they just kind of trusted me because I was traveling and training and improving at a fast rate. So I think the kind of fast improvement rate definitely came from the different trips every summer and stuff.
What was the levels like in Ireland versus like the US or obviously fight sports, a very tough gym, and they're gonna have some high level competitors, a lot of really tough training partners there. But like, if you could compare it, like when you're talking about like when I started and Chewy started, like you see a purple belt or a brown belt, and they're like this unicorn, like it's untouchable. When I started, it was like 12 years ago. I was learning from blue and purple belts. So like, was the level is it still kind of behind in Ireland, but it's starting to catch up?
Definitely, yeah. Like in America, just the standard overall was much higher. And I think at the competitions is where that was the most obvious. Because in Ireland, when I was starting off as a white belt and a blue belt, I won a lot of competitions, but I don't know if I was actually good or not. I started just as it started to get a bit popular, but as soon as I went over to America, I was like, well, this is like a different game. I'd do an IBJJF tournament and I'd have 5 or 6 matches if I wanted to win. Whereas at home, I might have 2 or 3 at the most. And just guys were just physically much fitter, even the older guys. And that's the thing about Cyborg's gym. I feel like a lot of what happens in the different gyms comes from the top down. So however the coach or the leader behaves, that's how everyone is. So everyone was just tough as nails. And back in my home city, people were just like family guys who would train a couple of days a week and, go drinking all weekend and then go in for a few rolls. And and I was kind of like that as well at the start, but yeah. So going over there kind of helped me to grow up a bit in the jiu-jitsu world as well.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the people that, like you said, they're kind of the weekend warriors, but
Yeah.
it's just different. Like you're a young guy who gets eaten up by this stuff, and you're like, you go into it, and that stands out. So you were talking about better training, right? Like, because this is something that I see all the time where, when I got into coaching, for instance, I remember looking at it and, I got sort of handed the torch as a brown belt. And I was like, I need to figure out more ideas. So I started studying like other sports and like, how do they train? How do these athletes that are paid millions, right? Where they have people that literally just sit around and figure out, how can I get these people into the best shape possible? How do they train? And then how do we train? And I remembered like one of the big sort of like realizations to me was that like jiu-jitsu training, at least at the time, was kind of in the Stone Age, where it was just like, how do you get better? You just beat the shit out of your body every day. You train 3-4 times a day. Just go hard as hell, like destroy your body to the point where your joints are aching and you're broken down, no rest, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I'm kind of on my little rant, but what are some things that you noticed when you started maybe teaching classes or running classes or having that kind of say in things? Were there some things that you adjusted that you thought maybe would be better training practices?
Yeah. I like to try out new things. And as you were saying, kind of looking at other sports, I would just see how they would train, and not just for sports, but how to actually learn. Because in jiu-jitsu, I felt like there was like the knowledge, like obviously now you hear people talk about knowledge and skill. So skill is like, how can you apply the knowledge?
Sure.
But as well, back in the day, I used to think there was like the technical side and then the feel side. So I used to think the feel will just come from training and feeling it and experience. But then the technical side, you could try and be really precise when you drill. And I was big on drilling slow, because I remember one of the things I remember from a kid, I don't know if you have like sports days in America where like it's like a family sports day at school. So your parents will go, you'll go. And I remember me and my dad, there was a 3-legged race. So you tie your legs together and you have to race like 200 meters or 100 meters. And me and my dad used to demolish everyone, because he would say, no, don't run, because you'll fall. He was like, start off slow and build a rhythm. So we would just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we would be moving in perfect rhythm. And then by the end of the race, we would be nearly sprinting, whereas everyone else would be stumbling and falling. And I would kind of apply that in the training. So I used to force everyone to do it like smooth, and like everyone used to drill like pretending they're in the Matrix, really precise, no wasted movement, really smooth. And then I would say, okay, this round now 5% faster. This one 5% faster, 5% faster. And then it just got like, everyone got really smooth in the gym and precise, and it actually helped the person who was being drilled on as well, so we kind of turned it into then like the active drilling and like play fighting nearly more than anything else. So those kind of different ideas. But yeah, I'm always looking at different ways that like sports people will train. Like I know those neck bridges that everyone loves as well. They give you a really strong neck, but they mess up your discs. So I was thinking how I wanted to find out different ways to train your neck to make it strong. So recently I've been looking at a lot of the Formula One drivers, because obviously they have super strong necks because they'd be pulling 5 or 6 Gs in some of the corners. And I was saying, they're getting paid 20 million euros a year. How do they train their necks?
Yeah.
They definitely don't be doing neck bridges. I know the different stuff they do, different isometric exercises with bands and stuff, and they have huge necks and their discs are fine, So I'd always look at what is the best source for what I'm trying to get and then work backwards from there.
Yeah, that's smart. And when you're talking about the drilling thing, we used to do the same. I did the same thing because it's one of those things where if you try to do things too fast, too early, they get sloppy. Especially with
Yeah.
drilling, like you
Yeah.
miss things. And so, I would tell the students like go slower and then slowly build up your speed as you get more and more comfortable to the point where you're doing the movement without having to think about it. And I remember one of the military guys, because we're close to an army base. I guess they have a saying in the military, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
That's exactly what I used to say to everyone.
Yeah,
Smooth is
yeah.
fast.
Yeah. And so that was it. And so like, that stuck with me. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things where, again, to the point where if you just start slowly with your drilling and you ease into it and then slowly build up that speed, then it gets to the point where you get more comfortable with the movement. You're hitting all the right places. And then you get to the point where you don't have to think. And that's when you start to really start to cook up.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can develop the feel a bit easier as well, I think, because you're actually feeling what's going on. When you're going too fast and your body's going faster than your brain almost, you're not developing that like kind of sensitivity that you get from feeling it out.
Yeah, the mind-body connection. It's very similar in a case like lifting weights. So for instance, when you're lifting weights, there's a time, depending on what the situation is, maybe to just do a really quick power movement or like an explosive movement. But let's say if you're trying to really tax the muscle, you might slow the reps down to a slow tempo and you're really focused on the contraction, really trying to basically, am I working the muscle, right? And the same thing there, like when you're doing those drills and things like that, you're trying to develop that intuition in the body. So this way you're going, like you said, off of feel, off of instinct, rather than having to think, because as we all know, if you have to think in the middle of a match, you're just too late. It's it. You don't have it.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. There's a question for both of you guys, because you're like the head coach at your gym, correct?
Well, I don't really have a gym at the moment.
Okay.
But I've kind of been coaching and like in different gyms for years.
So being kind of the probably near the top or the highest level guy that you train with, and Chewy for you as well, because you're kind of the guy at the top. How do you guys keep fine-tuning, developing your techniques, staying sharp? For you not having the training partners that you would in Miami, how do you do that? And I know kind of for Chewy, we have some places he kind of travels from time to time, but for you specifically, how do you stay sharp and kind of stay, on top of all these techniques?
Yeah, I definitely use the kind of travel strategy as well, and just go somewhere, get beaten up for a weekend, and then you're like, okay, I need to realize the different areas. But besides that, I'm always trying to add, let's say, depth to the different positions that I do. Sometimes I get caught up trying to add too much breath, like, oh, I want to practice my leg drags, I want to develop a good rear body lock, I want to practice this and that. But I think sometimes when I just go deeper into one area, I actually end up learning more about the other areas too. So whenever I'm kind of stuck and I don't know, like I feel like I'm plateauing or something, I try and like go deeper into a certain area, or else just learn something completely new.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed, and maybe I see what you think about this, and it seems counterintuitive. As I've gotten more experienced, I get challenged less, right? Like, so even like, the pool of people that can challenge me gets less. Now, we still have guys that are tough in the gym and stuff like that. But just generally speaking, as I've gotten better, I get challenged less. But one of the beautiful parts about that is it allows for a lot of play. Basically, a lot of times for me, I consider them almost active repetitions where, if I'm rolling with like a blue belt, for instance, or a white belt who doesn't actually stand a chance of stopping me, well, then I'm like, all right, I'm working on this one move and I'm going to try to get lots and lots of reps. Now they're resisting full speed 100%, but then I get to try that move out. And like you said, really focus in on that area and build depth. And I get to kind of work it up until to the point where I can get to the point, because it's more forgiving. It's going back to learning, right? How do humans don't learn like in a natural setting? We watch, but we don't sit down in a classroom and then get told to do things and then try them. That's kind of a way that we're taught to learn. Humans watch things and then we play with things. We just tinker with them. They just mess around with stuff. And so when you get that buffer of skill under you, you get this new ability to just kind of play around a lot more. Because it's, you don't have to worry about getting smashed afterwards, because it's like because you can always find your way out of something. Would you say similar for you? Like you can kind of play a bit more with techniques?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I feel like every year I'm able to improve more and more. Whereas you see a lot of people I would have seen in different countries or different gyms when I'd be traveling, they would get good and then they would plateau and they would be kind of have the grinding style. Whereas my skill is just getting more and more every year because I keep that kind of play attitude. I don't know what it is, maybe part of my personality. I just like to especially do a lot of submissions. Like I'll roll with someone who's a good blue or purple belt, and I'll try and submit them 20 times in the round, but in a nice way.
Yeah, of course.
And even afterwards, I'll say like, "Oh, I was going hard there. That's the best compliment I can give you." And they're like, "Oh, us, thanks." And but yeah, I think the play is the biggest one. So I train a lot, like with people who are like blue, purple belts around my size. I do a lot of specific training. That's my favorite thing to do, like from specific positions. And I would just try and do exactly what I was drilling in the specific positions, and then we'll go into the rolling. And in my mind, it's like I'm not trying to hit the move I was drilling. I'm just trying to get to the area that I did the specifics in, and then that'll kind of take care of itself. But yeah, I definitely feel like the play is the biggest one. And even in the drilling, I just call it play fighting sometimes when we're doing the different drills, because that's kind of what it's like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, when it boils down to it, we're just playing a game when we roll anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we forget the play part because it becomes
Trying to win.
Yeah, it becomes so serious, and we get in our own way with it. I mean, I was that way when I was younger because I'm trying to identify with something, you know. And I remember as I got older, probably the most liberating thing was, you know, unidentifying myself with whatever outcome comes from jiu-jitsu, because then you just don't care. Then you're just playing and you're having fun with it. Yeah. What do you do though? This is sort of the opposite to that, because, you know, I'll play a lot in the gym, but when it comes time to compete, you know, especially a couple weeks, like 4 to 8 weeks out, I'll really start to play my same stuff, like the game plan. And honestly, jiu-jitsu at that point, I tell people, like, it's one of the reasons why I don't compete as much as I used to, because it kind of gets boring because I've got to like hone in on just this simple area. But what do you do to maybe like kind of get into that mindset for competition? Because I mean, obviously you may have some playfulness to it, but you know, when you go into a competition, you have to be very assertive and assert your game on someone. Is there anything that you do to sort of kick up that mindset or that game that where you're really going to go out there and just, assert your will on someone?
I've kind of, every competition I do, I'm developing more like my, let's say, mindset for competition, my different routines, the different things. But now I have a lot of experience with it. And I think this is kind of why I've always been good at competing. And I would nearly compete better at the competition than I would in the gym. Most people would be the other way around. And I think it's kind of the same feeling as showing off. I don't know if that makes sense, but like, I know if I'm doing like, if I'm in a yoga class or something and I'm at the front of the class and everyone is looking at me, my yoga is like off the charts. It's way better. And I don't know if that's just because the pressure's on, or if I have the mindset where I'm like showing off, you know. And the bigger the competition, usually the better I do, you know. And just, but if I overthink it and I take it too seriously, I just do terrible, because I get tunnel visioned. And then it's like, instead of using my subconscious skills, it's like I'm just thinking so slowly, because I'm trying too hard. So you're trying to think, oh, do this, do that. But that's, for me, that's too slow. You have to just relax and let your kind of subconscious skills do everything for you. And then you're like then you feel like a ninja, you know. So I think I've always been good at the competition, and that's just because I'm probably a bit of a show off.
Nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with it.
Do you ever like, so you had a highlight that I saw at Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds against Imanari. He did the Imanari roll on you and looked like you were super prepared for it. So I'm curious, like, did you purposefully prepare for that position, that technique? Because what happened, you ankle locked him, I believe? Was that ankle lock?
Yeah, inside heel hook,
Inside heel hook. So it was Combat Jiu-Jitsu World. Was it the finals?
That was the semifinal, I think.
Yeah, and he rolled into it. You knew he was going to do it.
Yeah.
And you, like, anticipated perfectly and caught him, you know, in a heel hook. Tell me about that. Did you, like, you didn't specifically prepare for that situation?
I would say I mentally decided before the match, because I was there with one of my friends, and I was talking to him before the match, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try and get on top, pass his guard, take his back. And then I was like, do you know what? That's kind of saying that like I'm trying to avoid the leg lock game. That's like admitting that he's better at it than me. And as well, his guard is hard to pass. I've seen him in Ari give Nicky Ryan a tough match. I've seen him give other guys really tough matches. And he had just heel hooked two good people before the semi-final as well. So I was like, you know what? If I get caught in something, that just means I need to practice more and I'm not good enough. But I feel like I'm ready, and I feel like I deserve to be able to win a leg lock battle, because I've put a lot of time into it. So it was more just accepting that whatever happens in the leg entanglements, I'll be okay. And then, yeah, I wasn't expecting it to go like that though. After I submitted him, I hopped up and I looked over at Eddie, and Eddie was like, and I just looked over at him. I was like, And then I felt like I'd already won. I don't even remember doing the final because I feel like I had already won, like at that
Yeah.
stage. But
Well, what was that like preparing for that? You know, because you don't have really any MMA experience. So doing a combat jiu-jitsu competition, are you training some striking, or are you just like, I'm just gonna, just submit everybody. I'm not gonna worry about strikes.
yeah, I kind of decided because again, I was thinking about the competition before I did it, and I was thinking, okay, am I going to be TKOing people with strikes? Probably not. Do I want to get into a bit of a slap off where we're both like palming each other and it looks a bit weird? You know, I wouldn't be able to show my friends that or anything. They'd be like, you know.
Chewy and I, like, we did that one time. He was slapping my ass, like we were rolling,
Yeah.
and yeah. So I kind of envision what it would look like possibly.
So I wanted to avoid any of those kind of weird situations, and so I decided before it. I was like, look, I've spent my whole time just doing submissions and doing jiu-jitsu. So I was like, if someone tries to slap me, they'll probably give me space to attack them in some other way. And if I have them mounted or if I have their back, they would be wise not to slap me from there. And I was just thinking it would be kind of cool as well to submit everyone without hitting them. And that would kind of make a statement, you know, because as well, like jiu-jitsu is it's easy to say, oh, those guys aren't good at fighting or good at MMA or anything because it's all, you know, they're double guard pulling and tangling each other's legs up and stuff. But like when you need to go, you can go. Like if you're a black belt, you're pretty good at fighting, I think, especially in the grappling area. So I kind of wanted to prove that even if you can hit me, like I'll probably still get you with some. And so I won. I submitted everyone. I got hit maybe 3 times, and I didn't hit anyone. I threw a few fake slaps, which is funny. And actually, one of the funniest ones was my second match. I did like a fake slap as if I was going to do this, and then leg dragged my who was it? It was Tokuro, a good Japanese MMA fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Leg dragged him, took his back, and then when I was on his back, he went like bang and hit me right in the nose, like with a little thing while I was on his back, and I was like, "Oh, come on, man!" And he was like, "Sorry," and then I just rear naked choked him straight away.
Oh man, yeah, so, it's John Blank. He did the same thing a couple years ago. He did the combat jiu-jitsu thing and just went through and closed distance, got everybody and submitted everyone.
Yeah.
When you were in the gym training, you know, because I fought some MMA fights, and I remember I would always have to adjust my rolling a little bit because of the punches that we would have to do, just because I had to be more cautious of distance, because I didn't want to sit out there and get clobbered. But pretty much my jiu-jitsu didn't change all that much. Did you have to do anything before? Did you like have guys in the gym trying to slap you at all, just to sort of get used to it?
I didn't, but I was visualizing it in my head all the time. So let's say if I had someone in a guard position, he wouldn't be hitting me, but in my head I would be thinking, if there was a distance there where he could, I would have to close the distance. And so I think the main thing I did was just be more active and keep it in mind. So I kind of pretended like I was always under threat, and I think it actually helped my grappling more than anything, because I wasn't distracted by anything else, because you're so focused because you're trying to not get hit. So maybe I should just do every tournament combat jiu-jitsu.
And did you ever have, like, you know, because back when I first started jiu-jitsu, pretty much everyone that got into jiu-jitsu sort of was getting into it for fighting purposes, like 2003. So like very few people got into it because they're like, yeah, I want to do this to work out a little bit and sweat. That wasn't really the reason, but everybody that trained wanted to fight. And that was kind of why we got into it. For you, did you ever have ideas of wanting to fight mixed martial arts, or were you mostly jiu-jitsu through and through?
That was pretty much the reason I started, is because I wanted to do MMA. I was kind of always.
What year did you start? Sorry.
It was the start of 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was kind of watching a bit of the UFC, and I was like, oh, this has weight classes. This is cool. Because all the sports that I was doing up until then, my friends all grew up and I was tiny. I was like 60 kilos and trying to play rugby and different Irish sports that are very physical, you know, and like I was playing basketball as well. And, I was playing a lot of basketball, and just I was hoping that I would get tall, and I was drinking so much milk, and it just wasn't helping, you know. And, so I had to switch to kind of a weight class sport, and then I started doing MMA, and I was doing like maybe 2 MMA classes, 2 jiu-jitsu classes a week. But then over the course of like my first few months training, the coach would be getting annoyed at me, because every day I was like, oh, let's do like some grappling today in the MMA, and like it's like, oh, let's do fighting on the ground, let's do like, you know, like grapple boxing on the ground,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And he was like, look, leave me alone with the ground. Like, and then I used to come in early before MMA trainings and just get someone and try and do like drilling and different stuff. And then just the more classes were available, I kind of just started doing only jiu-jitsu classes and just kept doing it from there. But yeah, it was just addictive. Like, I don't know.
No, what's that?
I was saying, have you had any MMA fights or anything? Or
Yeah, I fought. I had 13 fights, and then you know, and so like I fought. But I was in a similar situation with you because I wrestled in high school, loved wrestling, and then the college I was going to they didn't have a wrestling program, and for me, I needed to do that. I was like, the connection that I had in wrestling to the people around me, like I missed it so much because it was absent in anything else I did in life. Like that connection, you know what I'm talking about, where you're beating the hell out of each other, and you're just there's some sort of primitive connection you have with people that just doesn't exist day to day. And I was like, I need that. So I started doing jiu-jitsu because I was like, well, I want to fight anyway because I watched UFC. I wanted to do it. And I got into jiu-jitsu, loved it. And then I fought. And then as I fought progressively, I was realizing I don't love fighting as much as I love jiu-jitsu. And I would I enjoyed boxing. I boxed for, 6-7 years, but I was always like upset and almost sad whenever I had a fight coming up because that meant I had to train more striking, more MMA, and less grappling. And so the writing was on the wall for me. It was like, this is what you're supposed to be doing more of. And so in 2012, I stopped fighting. It was just like, I want to focus on jiu-jitsu only.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a similar thing for me. I was just not worried, but I was thinking I just want to train every day. And I saw that MMA was a very injury heavy kind of game. And as well, like I would see, because I used to help some of my friends train for MMA fights, and they might do a training camp maybe over 2 months. And at the beginning of the 2 months, I was maybe a blue belt, so they'd be beating me up. But then by the end of the 2 months, I would be submitting them, even though I wasn't doing MMA, I was just doing jiu-jitsu. And I was like, maybe it's better, like maybe I'll be better at fighting if I only do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right.
But
what sport do you think, like, so you played a bunch of different stuff growing up?
Oh, everything.
Is there one sport that you feel like was really beneficial for your jiu-jitsu? Like for me, I played soccer. And so like, the dexterity and the awareness, football.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I played football. And so the awareness and the dexterity like that I developed with my legs and some leg strength was kind of, I think, beneficial for me. Was there anything like that for you that you noticed?
Definitely. I think it was more just the variety of sports that I played, and a lot of things like I used to play a lot when I was a kid. It's an Irish sport called hurling. It's like
is that throwing up?
That's after the hurling. We do the other type of hurling, but we're pretty good at that sport as well, actually. And it's like really aggressive, better version of lacrosse, kind of.
Okay.
But it's so that was like there's a lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of different things like that. I played a lot of rugby, and I think it was more just always being competitive, because like I had good body awareness, good at learning, good hand-eye coordination, and then the competitiveness as well. So I think that helped me a lot. And I got my blue belt in maybe like 10 months or something. And so I was kind of natural with the jiu-jitsu. That's why I wanted to stick with it as well, because I was thinking I'm a bit better at this than the MMA or anything like that.
Well, it sounds like being, a smaller guy, like you're used to being physically, like in physical contact, like even with soccer, some people don't think that, but it's pretty physically, demanding. You're pushing each other, you're shoving, and especially some other stuff like rugby. I mean, so you're kind of used to that, like initial kind of contact that almost like just really being aggressive. So I think, in jiu-jitsu wise, some people get kind of almost turned off by that. They get, they kind of shell up. You probably kind of thrived. You liked it. And plus people were kind of your size now. So I think that was, you saw maybe an advantage in that.
Yeah. Starting off being like, I was probably about 58 kilos, I'd say, when I first started training. I don't know how heavy you were, Chewy, when you started, but I feel like some people that start, they're like too strong. Yeah. And then they can't focus. So I'm actually thankful that I may as well have been 12 years old when I started, even though I was 17, because I was like tiny.
Yeah. It's funny.
I'm still small.
My buddy, like one of my best friends growing up in high school wrestling, he was actually smaller than you. So you're about like in freedom units, you're about 132 pounds, which is, obviously 60 kilos. And he was about let's see, he was about 53 kilos.
Wow.
And so he was a small guy. And I remember when we first started, he wrestled, he did really well in wrestling because of weight classes. And then we got into jiu-jitsu. And I remember I was always pissed at him because I was a big guy. I was, probably, they were probably around 87, 88 kilos when I was coming out of high school. And, he was small. And I remember when we went to our first competition, he pulled we'd been training for 2 weeks and we did our first competition. He, as a wrestler, he pulls spider guard, puts a guy in a triangle, does this to two guys. I'm like, what the shit? Like, how do you triangle? Like I'm wrestling. Yeah. And then me, I'm going out there and I'm like wrestling ugly. And I get on top of the guy and I'm going for this ugly key lock. And I'm just like power throughing it. And I remember watching our first match, later on, 6 months later. And I was like, he's still smoother than me. And again, part of it was because he didn't have the luxury of being able to power through things. He had
what it was.
He had to learn it. And kind of a fun story about it was we went to a party once where he was a small guy, but he kind of had a hot head sometimes. I remember we went to a party once and we get there and this big guy was kind of messing with him a little bit, like big football player type. And I remember afterwards he challenged a dude. They go out in the grass because he kept making fun of him because he's like, I could out wrestle you or whatever because he knew he wrestled. They go out in the grass and my buddy arm drags him, takes his back, chokes him. You know what I mean? So again, he was tiny. He's a little dude. This dude's like 3 times his size. But it's interesting to see how people's games develop based upon whatever physical attributes they have available to.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just so happy that I was pretty small when I started off because I started off with one of my a couple of my friends as well. They were a lot more physical than me, and my technique just improved so much because I had nothing else to rely on. I had to do everything really precise, and so it was good. It's always funny as well being. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, are you doing any strength conditioning now? Since you're starting to get in the upper tier of competitions, have you developed and added that to your game, and has it helped you?
Yeah, definitely. I lift weights maybe a couple of days a week, just the main big lifts, and I have different friends helping me with programs and different things. I feel like it's paying off a lot. I feel a lot more solid now than I used to. My legs would be a lot stronger. My legs used to be smaller than my arm when I was a teenager, I'd say. But so I put on a bit of muscle. I'm probably about 70 kilos now, which is still pretty small. So maybe 155, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
70, so just to keep I feel like the injury prevention you get from lifting weights a couple of days a week as well is really important. And besides that, I do a lot of yoga as well, a lot of different mobility drills, and then loads of jiu-jitsu as well.
Do you do that yoga in the front of the room?
Sometimes I have. I've had some awkward moments at home doing it in because I would just take off my t-shirt and my pants and just do it in my jocks in the sitting room wherever. Throw on a little video of yoga for BJJ or something and do it, and then I'll see my next door neighbors walk in front of my house and they'll just look in and I'll be doing some weird pose and I'll just be looking at them and I'll be like, hi. And they're just like, "Oh Jesus!"
Oh yeah, I've done the same thing. Not quite in my underwear, but in some very short shorts out in my backyard. It's in the middle of summer, and I'm doing this weird meditation stuff, and then my neighbor's out there cutting the grass. Like, what the hell is this guy doing? It's fun.
That's interesting.
But I'm always practicing my let's say mobility or doing anything. If my back feels a bit stiff, I'll lean over and use my lungs to kind of crack it, or if I'm waiting for the bus, I'll be sitting in a squat, and my girlfriend thinks I'm so weird, but my mobility is good, so that's what's important.
Yeah, it's important to keep, like you said, you touched a quite a few really good points. Number one, having the mobility available, and then being able to control that mobility, having some strength there is just an easy and natural way to reinforce your muscles and reinforce those joints, because when you're having that little bit of mobility or that little bit of strength can keep you from a severe injury. And so I think as that comes out, especially with the leg lock games and things like that, you're just getting more and more resiliency to those joints. And you being a younger guy, you have to really avoid or try to be mindful of kind of overstretching, over kind of taxing your something like your knee, for example. I would say those ligaments eventually would get kind of almost like taffy. They'll get kind of elongated, so you have to use some of that strengthening is really important to, keep everything at bay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think for someone who's been doing jiu-jitsu nearly 10 years, I've probably been injured the least, touch wood, but the most I've missed from an injury in training wise is probably 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say. You know, because I just always try and focus on it. I'm always careful. If I do get some little niggle, I rehab the shit out of it straight away. And yeah, because I just love training. The thing is, I just want to train every day and get better. Like, there's no better feeling than learning a new little move or variation. So that's kind of what I want to do every day.
Yeah. How's the, you know, I kind of wanted to ask you about Polaris as well. So it's quite an interesting rule set, and you competed in it was the squads, but in the No-Gi, correct? Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about like what that rule set's all about? And there's a Polaris show, is it November 7th?
Yeah.
On Fight Pass, and that's the gi version, and you've got a title fight. Then we'll get into that real fast.
Yeah.
But as far as like the rule set, what was that like? What was that like for you? Had you ever competed in anything like that squads kind of rule set?
Yeah, it was a really cool rule set actually, and I'm always thinking one of the things that people complain a lot about jiu-jitsu is that there's no definite rule set and who wins this and who wins that. But I think that's one of the cool things about it is there's so much variety and there's so much different ways to change up the game. And so for this last squads event we did in the No-Gi, we had like 2 teams of 8, and I think it was we were saying it was kind of almost modeled after like a rugby style thing. You'd have the 8 forwards against the 8 forwards in like a scrum. But so it was 8 on 8, 4 heavy people, 4 lighter people, and you could fight anyone. And it was only 5 minutes. So I think that would kind of, like, you wouldn't want to go against someone who's 20 kilos heavier for 10, 15 minutes, but 5 minutes I think is okay to survive. But it kept the pace really high. And I think the best thing about the event, like me watching it back the next day, it was honestly, like, I know I'm super biased, I was in it, but it was a pretty exciting event because there was no breaks in between the matches. I know that sometimes I lose a bit interest in some of the events because there's a good match and then you have to wait like 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. There's ads, there's everything. I'm like, the event takes 4 hours, but this one was just like 40 minutes straight. Then there was a 20-minute break and there was a super fight. And then there was another 40 minutes straight. And in between each match, there's only 30 seconds. Nice. So it was actually the most fun tournament that I'd ever watched, I think, when I watched the replay a couple of days later, because there was no breaks. But as well, the 5 minutes, it makes everyone push the pace. You're not afraid of getting tired. Like sometimes if it's 10 minutes and you get too tired in the first 5, then you're worried you get submitted in the last 5. But for the 5 minutes, it just keeps the pace high. And it was a really cool event.
So if you won in that 5 minutes, do you stay on? And you continue?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I was the only one who got a submission, actually. So I was the only one who had to stay on. And then my next match was a draw. And then all the other matches were draws as well. It doesn't sound great on paper, but in practice, it was actually really intense, because I think the organizers were saying they counted the submissions and there was like, 100 different submission attempts. It's just when you have kind of an evenly balanced team and a lot of high level guys, like I think everyone is a black belt, like a good black belt on the show. It's just hard to submit someone in 5 minutes,
Yeah, it's interesting. For me personally, I think like one, kind of to touch on your point, I think it's good that jiu-jitsu does not have one centralized body that controls the rules, because then it becomes something like judo, which again, judo is cool, but they start removing things out because they don't want them to have this and stuff. And I think sometimes you lose that freedom to just try different stuff and to expose different stuff. Like you said, you can have different rule sets, but I'm a big fan of shorter time limits. I mean, you look at, you might have to adjust the rules a bit, but if you look at even things like wrestling, like Olympic wrestling, they don't, you might do 6-minute rounds or 6-minute matches in high school. When you get to the Olympic level, they don't push it to 10. The work rate just goes up. You get faster, you get better, and you just go faster. The one thing
I couldn't agree.
Yeah, the one thing I'm curious about, because for me, like I love that idea. The only thing I'm not a fan of is like, and this is the thing, like, and this is just for a lot of events. Like I remember, I like having some sort of like, this is it, right? Like they're like no draws, like we're going to have a winner. Because I feel like sometimes if you have a grappler, like they can sometimes, like, when you, for instance, if you do like a point-based tournament, one of the things I like about points, they have their downsides. They have their downsides because it can create a lot of passivity because guys just chill. But there are those moments too where someone knows they're down and they're like, I got to go, right? And then you get these crazy scrambles. I like the idea of having a definite winner. But again, it's one of those things where I've also seen where, just like you said, like where you have these matches where people aren't hindered by points or by a winner or loser, and they just go after it too. So it's the rule set's definitely interesting. One question I have for you is, what do you like better, the gi or the no gi?
Definitely the no-gi. I think it's more that I like the training for it a bit more. I feel like I get injured way less. I think my back gets very tired when I do a lot of gi. It's like my posture is more broken. I'm doing a lot of pulling, and I feel the weight difference a lot more as well, because someone can just grip up and kind of stabilize on you a bit more. And as well, I just feel like no-gi for me is a bit more expressive almost. Like I can take advantage of my good mobility. I can move a bit more freely. I can float around the guy if I want. I can squeeze him, and it kind of feels a bit more real to me, nearly in a weird way. I know the gi is cool, and I love the gi, and I'll get back to it next year, I'd say. But I just think in the no-gi, you have to be, I think it's more technical even than the gi, because you need to have so much depth with it. Like, if to even just hold side control on someone is so hard, no gi. You have to really have good positioning, good control, good like awareness of how your body slots into theirs in the right way. Whereas in the gi, you can just grip them and squeeze, and it's kind of, and I think in the gi as well, I don't really like the direction things are going in with all the lapel, and like sometimes people put my lapel between my legs, and I'm just like, oh.
You're stuck. Yeah, you just get stuck.
I would just like let them sweep me and mount me so I can just get my leg free and then try and get back to normal rolling, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I'm a big fan of the gi, and I like no-gi, but I like no-gi better. And part of the reason why is just what you said. Like, I hate some of the positions you get locked into with the gi, and then there's no breaks, right? To me, it's like, I would like to see, like, I don't mind those positions, but if we get stuck in a position for like a minute and there's just nothing happening and both people are just kind of sitting there like looking at each other, let's just kind of like do a break, almost like a stand up in a fight, and just let's reset the action. Because I remember going to, I've been to several tournaments and had these, you'll see these two big names going at each other. And I'm like, pull up and like fight my way through the crowd to get to a good spot. And I'm like, okay, here they go. And then it like ends up in this like tangled mess of lapels and everything else. And then it just crawls to a standstill for, 5 minutes, and they just kind of teeter-totter. One person gets the nod, and it's so anticlimactic. It's like, this could have been a great match if they would have had more, room to move or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of time wasting in it, like, isn't there? And I think as well, the main thing that made me start doing more and more no-gi as time went on is just, I've never been someone who trains twice a day, all the time, because I just get a bit wrecked from it, and it just doesn't really suit me as much. So I like to train maybe once a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and mix the intensity with that. But I feel like I get more training done no-gi. Like, I can do more submissions per round, I can move more, I can just do more jiu-jitsu further round. Whereas in the gi, sometimes half the round is spent in like, someone has you in lasso and you have to take 2 minutes to get past it, and then you've done like one movement in 2 minutes. Whereas in no-gi, you might have done 20 different moves in the minute,
Yeah, it's probably why a lot of the older guys, like, you'll hear them say like, man, I love the gi because I can slow those young guys down,
It's those grips, man. Those grips only get stronger as you get older. You get those stronger grips, and you can slow people down. I mean, gi or no-gi is it's a faster pace. I mean, just there's no way around it. There's less friction. It's just such a faster moving. I think more dynamic. There's a lot more, less ability to hold someone in a position. I mean, again, of course you can if you have a very solid side control, or you can definitely hold people in positions. But I wanted to ask you, man, is there a rule set that you kind of prefer? Not really gi or no gi, but is there a rule set you really feel like suits you the best, and why do you think that is?
I don't know if there's one that suits me the best. The one that suits me the best is probably just submission only normal jiu-jitsu rules. But my favorite is definitely just the ADCC rules. Mostly just because it's ADCC. It's like the pinnacle. It's the competition everyone wants to win. But as well, I think it's kind of a keep it real rule set, Yeah. And sometimes the trials is one of the hardest tournaments to win, I think, because it's a 6-minute round and 3 of it is no points. Yeah. And yourself, how hard is it to score points in ADCC rules? You could be all over someone for the match, and then you look at the scoreboard and it's 0-0, and you're like, how the hell is it 0-0? Because you have to pin them for about, I know they say 3 seconds, but sometimes it's more like 10, or they'll like get their shoulder a little bit off the mat and then it doesn't count. And so it's really tough rules, and it gives the wrestlers a bit of a chance as well, which is always fun.
Yeah, when you were because you won the ADCCs in the Euro trials, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so well, like I remember competing in the trials. I remember there were like a couple times where because of the rule set, like I had to be kind of like you had to be much more aware of what was going on at the time and stuff. Like I remember there was this one match that I had where I was up against this wrestler, and I think I could have wrestled with him, but it was just more efficient for me to pull. So I pulled guard in the non-point rounds. We got a little scramble, and I remember my teammate was telling me the time, and I got to the point like right where I'm getting ready to sweep him, and I just stopped. And then he goes, Chewy, there's points. Boom, and then I get my points. Then I like resumed or whatever. So this way I started up in there. Were there any unique situations created by the rules when you were winning the trials that maybe you had to be more aware of, or just some interesting stuff that maybe happened?
There was definitely a few. I think in my second match, I like passed the guy's guard, mounted him, was all over him, and then he got his guard back, and then the ref was like points, and I was like, I'm after wasting so much energy, and like I didn't get submission, but then I was able to pass the guard and take his back again. But I think in the final it's tricky then because you get a negative from the beginning,
right?
And obviously it's all about winning as well. No one cares about putting on a show or doing. Everyone just wants to win so bad. You can actually feel it in the air all day. It's a very like unique tournament. There's no hobbyists there. Like everyone is there because they believe they can win, and everyone would kill you to win. That's how it feels there. Especially like there's a lot of tough guys, a lot of Polish black belts, Russian black belts there, good wrestlers. And so in the final, I was actually saying like to one of my good training partners here, Dara O'Connell, I was saying, any advice for ADCC trials next week? And he was like, if you get to the final, just keep doing what got you there. Don't worry. Don't be afraid of pulling guard in the final, basically, and losing a point. So that's exactly what I did. Pull guard, got the negative, and I wasn't able to get the submission in the regulation, but thankfully he got a negative because he was just stalling me so much in the match. And then I was able to submit him in the overtime, thankfully enough. But it's just very unique. I was thankful that I had done them before, a couple of years before that as a brown belt, and I didn't win. I had an okay performance as a brown belt. I was still learning a lot, but I think just experiencing the rules and the kind of intensity of the competition definitely paid off. But how was your experience? You've done the trials a few times, I'd say, have you?
Yeah, I've done them once. I did them. I took third in I did.
Nice.
I took third in 2018, and it's funny because you're talking about that. So I won. I think it was what four matches or five matches, whatever. Four matches. Yeah, getting into it, and then in the semis, like. Again, I was up against a tough dude who had beat me before. And then I started like the whole tournament. I did it on 2 weeks notice. I was just like, let's go do it. It should be fun. Right. I wasn't thinking about it, and I got up there and I was just having fun. Like I was just, and I was taking guys back, getting a lot of submissions, chokes and everything else. And then in the semis, I went against this guy who ended up winning it. It was Tim Spriggs. But Tim and I had had a match like a couple of years prior to this, and he beat me on points. A lot of points. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do better this time. And so I started thinking too much. And I mean, man, I did not go out there and play the game that I'd been playing the whole time. I remember he jumped, there's a beautiful picture of him that I've posted numerous times where he's getting this flying guillotine on me, get caught. And I remember I get up off the mat and like, I'm just looking out to the distance and I'm like, dumbass, like you didn't play the game that got you there. Right.
Yeah.
I walk off the mat and they're like, someone asked me, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just pissed at myself. And then immediately they were calling my third place match. And they're like, do you need time to rest? I was like, no, let's just do this. So I was like, I went over there and then I went back to my game plan. I was like, I'm being aggressive again. I don't care. Let's do this stuff. And I won that one. So it's interesting you bring that up because I did the exact opposite of what I should have done.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of things recently. I've actually been reading a good book. It's called With Winning in Mind by Laney Basham.
Okay.
He's like an Olympic gold medalist rifle shooter, but he talks a lot about like the mental game. But one of the interesting things that I've always thought about it myself, but never in such a clear way, but he talks about how your self-image is the most important thing in the mental game. So how you see yourself. Maybe you see yourself, you say, I am better than this guy, I can submit him, I'm going to beat him. And I think that's what happens when you get promoted. Because I remember when I got my blue belt or my purple belt, I was instantly way better than I was the day before. Instantly. Because I thought of myself as being better.
Yeah.
And so that self-image thing has like helped me a lot. So now I'm just brainwashing myself every day, telling myself I'm a legend, and hopefully it doesn't make me too weird in a few years, but it's helping a lot for the tournaments. Because I think I did ADCC last year, and it's probably my worst performance I've ever had at any tournament in my whole life. At anything, like out of any sport, anything. And it's because I just was trying way too hard. Like I was just over trying every day. For the 5 months leading up to it, I was just like thinking, I'm gonna win this. But then I think I was in the mindset where I wanted to do everything perfectly. And it was like I was almost telling myself, if it's not perfect, you won't win. Whereas what I should have been doing is my normal mindset, where I'm like, fuck it, like I'll go out partying, drinking 2 weeks before, and then I'll go and I'll just tap everyone. You know, I probably wouldn't have done that anyway for ADCC, but I should have been a bit more like, it didn't need to be perfect for me to win. So I think now my mental game, like I learned a lot from that, and I've been reading and studying a lot and practicing out different kind of techniques and stuff. And it's just been more consistent now, and there's no, over trying was a killer.
Yeah, I think about it as like my best performances have always been when I want it, like when I really, really want it, but I don't need it. Like I'm not attached to it. I don't need it, but man, I want it bad, right? So like when I'm there, I'm like, I really want to get after it. I want to push myself. I'm enjoying the moment, but then I don't feel any sort of attachment to what's going on. I don't really care. If I lose, it sucks. Of course, I want to win, but I'm not attached to that idea, and I don't need to have it.
Yeah. Because I mean, when I think about it as well, all I wanted was to be able to train jiu-jitsu every day. So now I just kind of think of myself as a winner every day, no matter what, you know, and like you're the same. I'm sure you probably just wanted to train all the time and have your own gym and your own students and stuff. And like, you know, you're doing it so you can think of yourself as a winner. And then at the tournaments, it's more just like you don't need to worry about winning and losing because you've already won. As corny as that kind of sounds, but
no, it doesn't,
that
because
kind of frees you up then.
Right, because the self-image thing is huge, because that was something where a lot of times for me, where my background, which we won't get into right now, but it put me in a place where my ability was always it used to be always ahead of where I was mentally at. So like a lot of times I would throw myself into these situations and then realize, oh man, like there's way more in me than I thought it was possible, right? And I would have to catch up mentally. You know, and so yeah, so like now I'm in a situation where like I have a better grip on who I actually am. And you're right, like I know what I've done, and I've done a lot of cool stuff. So if I win this competition, that's great. Let's do it. If I don't, whatever, it's all right.
Yeah.
Do you do any thought affirmations or anything of that nature?
Nothing too specific, but I just try and always think, like I've always been a really positive person. Sometimes to my detriment, I'll just always assume that things will go perfect. Like if I can imagine it, that's the way it's going to happen. And then, but I'm not disappointed. I was only talking to someone about this the other day, actually. I was always really positive, but I used to get disappointed a lot when I was like a kid, because if things didn't go the way that I expected them to go, I would get really disappointed. But then that was really good for me, because then as an adult, I would be just as positive, but I wouldn't be disappointed at all. I'd be like, oh, it's okay. I'll just try my best, or I'll try and do this a different way. And I think that helps a lot with jiu-jitsu, because then after training, even if you have a rough day, I would just tell myself, look, you can't have the good ones without the bad ones. So tomorrow is going to be a really good one, you know, or like, I'm just trying to think about like the solutions to things instead of the actual problem itself. So I think that kind of helps a lot. And you see, it's weird. Like some people can leave training and like me and someone else might have the exact same kind of rounds and have a bad day. And I leave training thinking, okay, well, I stayed calm in this and this went right, and tomorrow's going to be a good day. And they can go home thinking, oh my God, I suck. I got beaten up. Like I'm terrible. And so I think just naturally my mindset has always been pretty good. But sometimes I do a bit of meditation and just repeat little things in my head, or just different things like that.
Yeah.
That's a great mindset. You know, it's something I personally struggle with. It's like if I have a rough day, I start to doubt and second guess and stuff like that. But like, I've gotten to a point where I'm like, okay, well, this is an area I have to address. Like I have to work on this part of my game. There's no way around it. So then I find myself putting myself in those tough situations, or training with those people that are really giving me a hard time, just because I feel like I want to try to figure it out. So it's kind of like a game, you know. You have to try to separate your like self-worth from your performance, kind of. And that's hard to do sometimes, because I think, you know, what you do as you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? Like that's kind of what you associate with. And it's hard to, want to be successful means a lot to you, you know, wanting it. But like Chewy, like you said, like I want it, but it, you know, I don't have to have it, kind of thing. And I think that's valuable. It's a valuable mindset when you're like growing, in the sport.
I think it's anything though. Like, have you ever like anything? I mean, from something you're like, it could be from jujitsu to going on a date with a girl to anything, right? Like when you come across as needy, or when you come from a needy place, it never works out great. You get in your own way. You're worried about everything else. It's when you have that distance where you can be like, I want this, but you know what? If I don't get it, whatever. Like, you're in such a better place to
that's it. Yeah.
Things, you know?
Well, I remember like before I met my wife, I'd be like, I would always text and stuff. And like when I met her, I was like, well, whatever. Like we met and then we didn't talk for like 2-3 weeks. And then so it's kind of like one of those things. And I was like, I wasn't needy about it, and it worked out great. But like I remember being
natural.
and then like being in relationships, and I was needy. I could tell, and I could sense it in myself, but I couldn't stop myself for some reason.
That's right.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I am a bit. If I could choke him right now, I would. No, yeah, man. Like I wanted to ask you, winning the trials. Obviously, you wanted to win ADCC, win the whole thing. But winning the trials, did you feel like you kind of like man, I've arrived. I'm kind of all right. This is where I'm going the way that I want to be going. I see the rise. I see a future in the sport.
Yeah. Oh, it was probably the best day of my life. And I always say this joking, like people always say, oh, the day like you become a father, like it's the best day in your life, no matter what. And I'm just saying, like, man, when I become a father, like the baby's going to have to be made out of gold or something to be better than that day. Cause that was insane. It was like a bomb went off inside my body after I won the final. Cause it was pretty epic as well. Cause it went to overtime and it was like my 5th or 6th match of the day. It went to overtime and then I got taken down in overtime and I was losing by 2 and I just kept attacking. And like my cardio's never been the most amazing thing. Is like my submissions are usually the thing that wins me the matches, and just being more technical than the guys. And then there was about a minute left and I took his back, like I arm dragged him, took him down, hopped on his back, and the ref was moving us in to the center. And when I say I had a death grip on him, I was just like, I've never squeezed anything so hard. And the ref was like, let go. And I was like, no, I'm not letting go. And he was like, let go. Because I was afraid he wouldn't reset us properly, So then finally I let go. We went in. And then as soon as the ref said, okay, like go back to the grip, I just latched onto him again. And then I was choking the guy and I had to put him to sleep with the rear naked choke. He wouldn't tap at all. There was about a minute left. And just getting up, I was just like, oh my God. Like I felt like now I'm a, let's say, kind of professional, or now I'm a real black belt, or, it's just like the years and years of expectation that I had for myself was kind of finally starting to realize it. So that was amazing, to be honest. Sometimes I think about it now and I'm just like, fuck, that was nice.
Yeah. What do you want to, so you've got this title fight, Ash Williams. Let's talk about that real briefly. Yeah. Before we let you go. So that's in about a week, or it'll be November 7th, a Saturday. Yeah. Now, is this your first title fight or title match?
Yeah, this will be my first title fight for Polaris anyway. And it's probably one of the biggest submission grappling competitions in the world. Like a lot of really well-known guys have competed there. So I'm actually really honored to have the chance to become one of the champions there and hopefully get some other matches against well-known guys in the future. But
it's definitely probably the biggest one over in Europe, isn't it?
Oh, by a mile, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And they're really professional as well. I always like the shows that are backed by Fight Pass. They treat people really well. And I can't wait. It's as part of the GI Squads event as well, which I think is going to be really cool. I know we were kind of trashing the GI a bit earlier on, but
I love the GI, man.
It's not trashing. It's just
not trashing. Yeah,
it's trashing. It's just like preference. But and you and I both know this. It doesn't matter. It's less about the gi itself. I mean, the gi has a role to play, obviously, but obviously it always comes down to the jiu-jitsu player. Because I mean, there's some guys, like for me, for instance, like again, when I compete, it doesn't matter if gi or no gi, I'm going for the kill. And there's some guys that you can watch, like I mean, if you watch a Gary Tonin match, like at anything, the guy's always. It doesn't matter if it's gi or no gi. It doesn't matter. He's going for the kill, right? And so a lot of times it plays more of a role with the people that are competing rather than just the gi itself.
It'll be interesting to see the how this rule set plays into it as well.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that maybe changes the dynamic of the competition.
Yeah, and I think the people they've selected for it, like Polaris, always do an amazing job with the matchmaking. And some of the guys on the show, they'll be more well known. Maybe Espen Matisse and Tommy Langacker, like world medalists in the gi.
Yeah.
Really exciting, like nonstop, as you were saying, kind of like a Gary Tonin of the gi.
Yep.
And then on the UK, they have a lot of less known guys, but they're just as dangerous. You know, so I think it's going to be, the teams might seem a bit lopsided, but I think in practice it'll be really exciting, and there'll be a lot of, again, just the 5-minute rounds. I think they're more exciting than the 10, because there's going to be no stalling. You have the pressure of your team shouting at you, and as well the fact that there's no breaks. I think it's going to be a really cool event.
Yeah, awesome. And you know you're not going to run out of energy at a 5 minutes. You can just go wide open. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a random question. And this came up to me when I was thinking about when you won the trials. Have you ever had this this experience where like you get done competing, and maybe it's either after you're done competing or later on when you're watching the match? Do you ever go back and look at yourself and go like, damn, who is that guy? Like, you know, because like when you get in these matches where you're really tested, like that match with in the finals, those are the matches where you really figure out, who am I? What am I made of when it comes down to it? And there's been times where I've had these crazy matches where I get done with it and I'm like, I feel like there was a different person out there. They look like me, they sound like me, but it's like we switched places. They went out and competed, and then as soon as I walk off the mat, I'm back to being me. Have you ever had this sort of like almost just like you're looking at something from like the outside, like, man, I did that. I look good.
Always. And it's like the most extreme kind of imposter syndrome you can have, like just watching it back, and just in my mind I'll be like, oh my God, like I should have lost that match. How did I just luckily became good for a few seconds, or like especially in the final against that guy, arm drag, took him down, took his back. Like I would hardly ever do that. At the last Polaris Squads event, I did a inverted triangle. Yeah. I've never done it in training. Yeah. Ever. I think I've done it maybe one time. And it was technical and nice. And I was like, where did I come up with that? But watching them back, it's always weird. And like, I don't know, like if it's a good thing that I be so hard on myself, or if it's a bad thing. But yeah, it's just hard not to do. And like, I guess you're kind of in a different zone when you're competing.
Yeah, it just it reminds me of like when I listen to like hear jazz musicians talk about jazz, where they just you're not thinking about the notes you're going to play, you just start improvising. And like you said, I've had so many matches over the years where like I get done with the match and I'm like, damn, that was cool. I've never done that ever in training. I've never drilled it. It was just something that happened, and that was super cool. So I was just curious. That's a fun aspect. I feel like that you get as you compete more and more, and as you get better.
I'd say it's kind of a sign that we're getting good at it, or improving, or where you don't have to do something that you do all the time. Like you don't have to do something that's rehearsed. You can just improvise and get the job done. So
that's true mastery.
I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
It's just being a master. I mean, you're never going to master jiu-jitsu, but it's kind of, you're getting into those like upper tiers of stuff where you can kind of go with the flow and just kind of.
Well, it's become instinctual.
Yeah.
It's no longer like the principles and movements of grappling are no longer something you have to think about.
Intuition too.
It's what I'm saying. It's instinct, and intuition. It just gets wired into the nervous system.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, before Chewy was my coach, actually, I'll share this quick story. Like, I was training at another gym, and it was an MMA fight. And like Chewy was, I heard about Chewy, and he like destroyed this guy. It was like a minute, maybe less. And you saw this really intense person. I mean, incredibly intense. Like it was almost like terrifying. And then you were walking just right next to us afterwards.
Was this at the casino?
Yeah, at the casino. And you're walking. I always share the story because you're walking and it seemed like two totally different people. I mean, like other like ends of the spectrum. It was just interesting because you kind of almost like save this other gear. Like you say this other part of yourself that you can't really tap into very often, but when you do in the right environment, it's just like, it's amazing. And you probably, tap into areas of your skill set that you didn't know you had.
That's it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
It's really cool to see, man. Well, thanks for your time. Best of luck, in your competition, hopefully much success. And if you're ever in the States, come by Kentucky.
For sure. Thanks you guys for having me on. And, hopefully everyone can tune in next week on Fight Pass, and hopefully there'll be an Irish Polaris featherweight champion coming away.
All right.
That's awesome, brher.
Good luck with it.
Nice one. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it now.
Hey, for sure. For sure, man.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right, guys. So that is the podcast. Hope you enjoyed that one. That was fun. I enjoy talking with, young, up-and-coming competitors and stuff like that. And again, first place at ADCC trials and Euros. It's a big deal. Obviously the dude's accomplished grappler, the Combat Worlds. I mean, heel hooking Imanari, that's kind of a big deal.
It was a cool video. I watched it, just popped up, and I almost thought that you knew that Imanari was going to do that, and I almost thought he prepped for it. But it was interesting to actually see that highlight and actually ask him about it and see if there was any correlation between how the match played out versus his game plan.
Yeah, just mentally he was just ready to go.
He's just it's interesting. He's already, it was maybe this third match of the night, so he's kind of already probably feeling it and kind of getting comfortable. So it was really cool. And having a big guy, a big name like Imanari, everybody knows who that is. It's interesting to see that how it played out. So
yeah, guys. So hope you enjoyed that one. As always, guys, we'll end this thing with whatever chatter comes, because there's always something, right? It's never usually the ending part of the podcast is usually just, all right, guys, let's get through these credits / whatever and get this thing on with. But I usually end up kind of rambling on about stuff. But if you want to support the podcast, you can do so by buying some Charlotte's Web at charlottesweb.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu. You can go to epicrollbjj.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu. Save 15% on that stuff. You can go to the Patreon. The Patreon. The Patreon. I say that with everything. The YouTube, the Facebook. I am on the Facebook. I saw you the other day on the YouTubes.
The YouTubes, yeah. You have to have the and then an S at the end.
The YouTubes.
The Facebooks.
The Facebooks. Flakebook.
Okay.
Flakebook.
All right.
I get on there to talk with my students. Here's an idea for you. Before I end this, this is something that I've been kind of big on. So for probably at least a year, I've been going on these what I consider every Sunday. I kind of fast from technology. I mean, I'll dick around on social media a little bit, maybe towards the end of the day if I need to. A lot of times it's to message my students and my coaches beforehand. But pretty much on Sundays, I stay off my phone. My phone goes in a corner. If you text me, I'm probably not going to get back to you. If you call me, I'm probably not going to get back to you. At least not till later. Eugene knows this, right?
Yep. You don't take it personal. It's just Chewy. He'll get to you eventually.
Well, especially on Sundays.
Oh, heck yeah.
Because on Sundays, I'm just I don't want to be around it.
I always set up our calls on Sundays.
Yeah.
So
I'll chat with you typically towards the end of the evening.
Sometimes, yeah.
But I'd say 75% of the time.
I'll catch you. I'll catch you eventually.
I encourage you guys to maybe go on a little stimulation starvation, because it's one of those things where you see people where sometimes it's do you even know what thoughts are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Right? What do I think versus what I'm hearing? Right? And that's something that's worth just taking some distance back. And I think this is really important in a time like right now where it's so politically charged. And, everybody's telling you what to think and telling you what to do and what to believe and everything else. But it's important, I think, to take some distance and sit back and just, what do I think about things? What do I believe? Right? Rather than what's being told to me, because we're all going through our own subjective experiences. And so I would encourage you, take some time. You can do this obviously throughout the week at different times. When I lift weights right now, I'm listening to either some audiobooks or I'm listening to binaural beats. And no hardcore music with lyrics or none of that stuff. And I just lift and I try to. It's almost meditative. It's like barbell meditation, where I'm just lifting weights and really trying to focus on that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, throughout the week, I don't actually have any social media apps on my phone. I have Instagram on there, which I don't use all that much. But I just use on my computer. I use social media on my computer, and then when it's done, right? But I encourage you to do that because it's good to let your brain just kind of wander. It's good to let your brain have some room to think and to just be in your own thoughts rather than having to hear everybody else's thoughts coming down and being crammed down your noggin. So I encourage you guys to do it. A little stimulation starvation. Try that out. See what you think. See how it makes you feel mentally. For me, it's freeing. I get more done. I feel great about it. And I think that a lot of people, if they did, they'd feel good. And here's a challenge to you. If you really want to kick it up, take social media and delete it off your phone. Take Facebook, get rid of it off your phone. Use it on your computer or whatever, if you want to, but get it off your phone. What are you going to miss? And I say this because a lot of people I've said do this. I'm oh, I need that. I'm oh, you need it? You need Facebook? You need Facebook? Well, then that means you're addicted. That's like an alcoholic talking, right? I need alcohol. You don't need it. It's there. It's usable, right? But again, the damn thing's been so processed to be addictive.
Sure.
And so again, just a thought. If right now in your head you're I need Facebook, well, then you might be addicted. You know, maybe just take a week off and see what you think, see how you feel. You might be like me where you take a week off and, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I think I'll just keep it to the computer. I'll just use it there a couple times a day and that'll be that, you know, rather than having it ding, 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 ding. Hey, check me, look at me over here. I got a new notification. You've turned your notifications off, but they're back on now somehow. Look at me.
Keep your podcast app on your phone so you can listen to us tell you about stuff.
Well, podcast. I mean, to me, podcast. That's a much better. Like you get to choose and listen to what you want to listen to. It's not being shoved down your throat. Anyway, that's my little rant here at the end. But so, if you want to support the podcast, also you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. Support it, where you can have either just the content and all that stuff, or you can have all the content that's in the back end there, along with a chance to hang out with me live on Sundays through Zoom. And if you guys want to, you can also go to jujitsutraining.com/pod. POD. I have my almost daily email list there where you can see whatever it is I'm got going on. That's kind of usually you'll get a precursor as to what I'm reading, what I'm up to, what I'm thinking about, what the videos are going to be about coming up if you're a part of that list. And you'll also get access to anything I have going on. Like, for instance, we just released the early release of the Butterfly Guard series.
Yes.
And we had a few hundred members that got into that. And again, that was only released through my email list. And so I do that because those are the people that I feel like are closest to me. So they get all the early stuff. They get all of the best deals. Everything goes to them first before it makes it anywhere else. So if you want to get any of that stuff, you check that out, jujitsutraining.com/pod, or you can check it out on jujitsu.net. There's an opt-in form there as well. So anyway, that's the podcast, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had a good time, and hope your week is filled with some awesome training, some awesome working out, something physical, because I know not everybody can train right now. And we'll talk to you guys next week.